connections.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us fight to be slaves. And everybody's just walking around, heading the clouds and wanna wake up to a dead in the grave. By then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days.
Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government releasing poison in the air.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven. That is Top Lobster, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's guest, I would like to remind all of our live viewers that this is a 30-minute preview only. Sometime around the 30-minute mark, we'll be going live exclusively to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad, where you can enjoy an ad-free viewing experience, early access to the episode before the general public, and you can do so for free. That's right, guys. You can sign up for a 7-day free trial. Try to absorb as much content as you possibly can in 7 days, and then get out of there before we bill you. But guess what, guys? The backlog of content on patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad is huge. So you simply will not be able to get through the content, and you will end up paying us. Head on over to Patreon, guys, and support the show. It is physically impossible.
In 7 days, there are going to be something like 300 hours, and I think we have more than that up there already. So you just simply cannot consume it. But I invite you to try. Please do.
Yes, that's it. I invite you to try. Joining us today is Tommy Cullum. Tommy, for the audience who may not be familiar with your work, let them know where they can find you and what it is that you focus on.
Hey guys, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. Can I just say the coolest intro I've ever seen? That got me hyped. That got me hyped.
I was gonna say that.
I don't know if you could see me, but I'm back here dancing. I'm ready to go now.
Can I just say there was one moment, Top, you did a thing that was really wonderful. It's when you have all the dancing nurses from the lockdown
like, bang,
era,
bang.
and they're kind of hitting it to the beat. I was like, damn, that's actually a banger. Good job, Top.
It's incredible.
Thank
Well,
you, Tommy.
I'm Tommy from Let's Get Freaky podcast, a show that we dive into the paranormal, all aspects, ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and I get a guest on normally to share their experiences and their work with the paranormal. Sometimes we get into the conspiracy as well, and we like to get freaky. Let's Get Freaky podcast. We talk all things weird and strange.
There you go. There's the link tree, guys. Don't forget to go over to Tommy's link tree, and you got access to everything all in one spot. Check out his YouTube.
I'm quite new to the YouTube. I'm sort of new to the YouTube. Been doing the YouTube for a while.
What's the most recent title video there? What is it? Oh, Tartaria. You went into Tartaria. Very exciting. Very exciting.
He was talking with the Fed, Paul Stobbs.
Sweet Paul Stobbs, who infiltrated our Telegram channel yesterday, queued off by MK Ryan, and he's trying to figure out what the boys at Nephilim Death Squad are onto. And we're not telling you, Paul Stobbs. In fact, instead of telling you what we're doing, we're here hanging out with your buddy without you. All right, that's what we're doing today. You know what's funny is we actually haven't done much of a dive into Tartaria. I know Paul does great work on it because the way that it connects to the whole Little Season theory, it's like a big component of it. But it's just one of those things. I don't know what it is. We look at it and we're watching other content creators just mercilessly Tartaria to with a stick, and I'm like, okay, other people have it covered. People that are sharper than us have it covered, and so we'll handle, I don't know, I guess all the remaining Nephilim. But you were talking about how
all the remaining
Nephilim. Yeah. But you were talking about cryptids, right? Is that something that you tend to focus on quite a bit on your podcast?
Quite a lot of the time. I mean, you had Patty from the Patterson-Gimlin film on your intro there. That was one of the reasons why I got into all this sort of stuff, was because I find, especially Bigfoot, super interesting. I've never seen one, not yet, but I look into it, and I started listening to Bigfoot podcasts at first, and then it sort of took me down this other rabbit hole, and then you learn about the Dogman and the Mothman, and there's a lot of them out there, and they're all around the world. They're in the UK, they're in the US, They're in every culture that we have, and I think there's something to this, man.
I was
A lot of
gonna
people.
ask. I might be. I'm very ignorant. I'm just a dumb Puerto Rican kid from America, but they have cryptids in the UK, right?
We do. We have sightings. People seem. Obviously, you got the famous Loch Ness monster in Scotland, which is one of the OGs. You know, there was a sighting literally 2 weeks ago, I think it was, where someone. You know, all these pictures are very hard. They're very blurry. You know, so it's difficult. We can't stamp down exactly what's going on. But yeah, there's people that see Bigfoot here in the UK. Dogman, you know, there's a lot of sightings.
Well, let me ask you this, Tommy. The narrative on Bigfoot has changed so tremendously, certainly since the days of like that, the footage that you were just talking about. What is it? The something gimlet?
Yeah, that's it.
And back in the day, there was a lot of speculation as to whether or not this is like a missing link, you know, somewhere in the chain of human development. If you subscribe to the theory of evolution, then maybe somehow Bigfoot fits into that picture. And we were pretty content looking at him as like, if he did exist at all, which was, you know, a real kind of stone's throw from reality for a lot of people, then he was some sort of just a regular ape. You know, some sort of upright walking ape that maybe we just lost track of. And now the narrative has shifted in such a way that it's kicked the doors open to ideas of like telepathy, ideas of dimensional travel, right? That these Bigfoot are somehow, you know, moving in and out of our physical realm into a different realm. This is why they're so hard to find. And it becomes pretty overwhelming, the amount of evidence to support that kind of ideology, just based off the fact that we haven't found a body, but we have no shortage of eyewitness testimony. I mean, like, it's never gone away. It's never died down. In fact, it's probably only gotten increasingly more so.
Something interesting I was listening to today. I love Tony Merkel's show. No matter how much content we do, I have zero time to listen to shows. Always will listen to Tony. He was talking about like people that investigate Bigfoot, and he said he was going to go find and try to exhume a Bigfoot body, and a doctor told him that she's heard of many cases where there's like extreme radiation poisoning that people get, and they'll be dead within a year when they come into contact with these bodies. Are you familiar with any of this?
I mean, I've not heard that, but that is very interesting. I mean, Tony Merkel is one of my favorites, the Confessionals podcast. Probably another reason why I started Let's Get Freaky as well. You know, he really inspired me. I was talking to someone very interesting the other day who sort of made a storm in the Bigfoot community here in the UK and in the US, Daniel Lee Barnett, and he's 15 years old. He's a very impressive young man.
Is that illegal to talk to this guy?
I know. I was like, is this right? That I'm talking to a 15... I went downstairs and I told my wife that I'd just been talking for nearly 2 hours to a 15-year-old boy online.
She started packing her bags up.
She was like, this has got to stop. This is sick.
Oh my God.
But to be honest with you, he was like smarter than me. He was like, the way he was talking and presenting himself, super smart lad. You know, he's 15 with like the mind of a 40-year-old. You know, the way he was talking, it was unbelievable.
I think we got to get used to that idea, like, because podcasting is becoming such a big thing that there are going to be these kind of savants that pop up, and they're, why not? Why wouldn't they be younger? You know, why wouldn't a younger kid be good at this?
And then
what was his what was his bag, Tommy? Did he have an experience himself?
So he had an incredible I'll say experience, but he got into the Bigfoot. What's the famous show? Finding Bigfoot.
Is it Bigfoot Hunters or Squatch Hunters or?
Yeah, it's one of them. So he started watching one of them shows when he was 13, and he got really into it. And he started like this is how smart the kid is. He's 13. So instead of like going out looking for Bigfoot like you would as a 13-year-old, if you're into that, he's gone out and he's using the same methods that Bigfoot hunters use to track Bigfoot, but he's used that on deers, right? Which I think is really smart for a kid of that age to even think that way. And he said it was an incredible experience because he's using these same techniques, and he's found like a herd of deers, and it was like amazing. So he found that, he done that, tick. He's like, okay, now in the UK, there's a lot of people, including my mother-in-law, that see big cats. So my mother-in-law 20 years ago saw a black panther in Essex in the UK. We can get into that if you want. But so he was like, okay, now I'm going to use that same technique that I used for the deers to find the big cats, to find proof of the big cats. And he said he was out with his grandmother, and he's going through, I believe it was Somerset. I think it was Somerset, and he's which is a lovely part of the UK, very countryside-y. and he's going through the forest, and they both stumble upon this giant foot, which sounds wild. And he's 13 when this happened, and or 13, 14. It was recent, and he's at this age, like he's with his grandmother as well. But he knows to like collect some DNA, to take a mold of the foot. Like he's proper, proper Bigfoot man. And he said he's got all this evidence, and then he found other like footprints as well, and took all the DNA from that and sent off these samples to a load of different labs around the world. He said a lot of people weren't even getting back to him, but I'm like sitting there thinking, this dude's 15 years old and he's talking to me like it was unbelievable.
Incredible. At 15 years old, dude, I don't know what I was chasing girls and okay, that's actually probably it. Full stop. That's the only thing that I was doing at 15 years old. I was not chasing an upright bipedal, interdimensional ape at all, or a telepathy ape at all. That's not so yeah, I mean, I'll give him some credit there. Give credit where credit's due.
We were just trying to find at that age.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Totally different B word. Totally different B word.
100%. So this is where it gets wild. So he sent off this evidence. One place got back to him in Portugal. One lab in Portugal got back to him and said that they will look at it and look into it. And he said a little while went past, and they reached him. They got back to him and they said, "This is incredible what you found." And this is how he explained it. And I'm no DNA expert. Like, I don't know a lot about this, like the DNA side of things. But basically, apparently, we've all got we've all got like new ape, they call it. This is what he called it. New ape DNA in us, apparently. That's in us, apparently. But what they found in this footprint was old ape DNA, which humans don't have. So whatever he had found had old ape DNA in this track, in this footprint. And it's just blown up from there. He's talking to some of the biggest researchers in the US. I don't know if you've heard of Bobo, Bigfoot, Cliff and Bobo.
Yeah. I feel bad because that guy, he's a great character, but when you end up getting caught in the repetition of a series that a channel wants to sell, they keep dragging you out into the woods, they keep making you whoop, they keep making you smack trees with sticks, and it's like, that guy, if you look at him, Bobo, he is like genuinely into this topic, but at the end of the day, you have to get pulled back onto this show and you have to go smack the trees with a stick and you have to whoop in the dark because we got a slot to fill, and we got viewers to entertain, and we got sponsors to make happy. And so, I think there's a lot to that guy, a lot more than what we typically see on Finding Bigfoot.
Yeah, well, they've got a podcast now. So their podcast is Bigfoot and Beyond, and they say that. There he is. There's the young man.
This is him?
That's him, yeah.
Look at him, that little skinny kid out in the woods looking for something that he doesn't even realize can rip his limbs off and him to death with his own arms.
He's braver than me, that's for sure.
Yes, he is. Yeah, I couldn't catch me rolling around in the woods doing that stuff.
Yeah, man. But so he's reaching out, and he's even doing a so you get the cryptid cons in the cryptid cons in the US. There's one coming to the UK now because of him. I think it's in a couple of months, and he was explaining that to me, and I'm just like, wow, man. So he's got this evidence, and he's got a documentary coming out. I believe it's in September, which is going to like really explain all this a lot better than I just did. And it's just mind blowing, man. So
that's
there's
fascinating. There's so much about the whole Bigfoot phenomenon that, like I said at the top of the show, it went from just being strictly like a wildlife biologist POV to all of a sudden it really gets into the supernatural realm. And a lot of the supernatural explanations are explaining this thing's elusiveness, why we can't get our hands on it, why we can't find a body. And there's all this kind of like, telepathic communication is overwhelmingly one. I know we talked to Doc Brown of the Prometheus Lens podcast, and what we were talking about with him is, I think we brought up the Bump podcast, and there was a woman who was on the Bump podcast. A lot of the audience is familiar with this story, where she's having prolonged interaction with a Bigfoot, and over time she manages to get some information from this thing. And one of the more profound things that it revealed to her was that it identified itself as an Iliud, and that it was seeking redemption. I know I'm paraphrasing. There he is. There's Doc right now. Shout out to Doc at the Prometheus Lens podcast.
Yes, sir.
And you start looking into the etymology of the word Eliud, and it seems to be some descendant of the Nephilim, right? Some descendant, some bloodline variant or branch of the offspring of fallen angels and human women. And, that whole idea that this thing is seeking redemption is kind of profound, because that's a topic that we explore a lot on this show, is do these things, whether they're cryptids or chimeric creatures or, the genetic lineage of the fallen, can they receive redemption through Christ? And so we already were kind of wondering and asking that question. So when that little bit of information came across the table, man, I mean, it makes Bigfoot incredibly compelling. It adds a dynamic to this story that, like, man, we're so far from 15 years ago where this thing was just an ape in the woods and it might be a missing link.
100%, man. For me, with these things in the Bigfoot world, it's very much, there's two sides. You're either in the woo camp or you're in the flesh and blood camp, and sometimes they fight, which I never get that. I don't get that at all, because we're all just trying to find the answers. But for me at the moment, as of today, I feel like there must be some sort of supernatural element to these things, because we can't catch up with them, we can't prove them 100%, so there must be a supernatural element to them,
And then you start to, like I said, you have those instances of telepathy, and you were talking about the genetic aspect of them. I remember a story. It's anecdotally, and I know I'm going to butcher it, but there was some sample that was taken from these things through one. I think it might have been like hair that was left on a tree, and when it was sent to a lab, it came back as like pretty standard. But there was one element that it totally threw them for a loop, and they didn't even have a genetic ancestry line for that DNA sample. And I wish I had a better access to that story right now. My mind is failing me, but I remember hearing that. Might have heard it on Tony's show, actually.
Yeah. But a lot of people say if you find like hair or evidence, don't send it to a lab. A lot of people say that because if you do that, you're probably not going to hear nothing back. It's going to go somewhere. They're going to throw it away. Like the giant bones that you find in the US and things like that. If you hand them in, chances are you're not going to hear nothing back. They're just going to be swept under the carpet and there we go.
I think there's something with the giant bones going on with that dude, the Boneyard Alaska guy.
That's incredible.
Okay, so you're aware of him, yeah. He was just on Rogan again. I haven't caught it because Rogan makes very long episodes. But that guy, he alluded the first time that these bones or whatever he was finding, he was like, yeah, they're not ancient remains, because if they are, then the government will seize my property. But it's just mammoth bones. It's just stuff like that. And I was like, I don't think so, dude. It's like I think it's a 5 square acre. In his 5 square acres of this property is where all of this action is taking place, and it's happening on top of itself. I'm like, something happened here. This is not just mammoths. These are. I don't know if we'll ever find out what it is, because he probably can't even disclose it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if they gave some of them bones to the British Museum, I think. That might be wrong, but one of the museums, I think, in the UK, and they refused to do any research or even acknowledge that they have them or something like that.
Yeah, well, we did an episode recently on the idea that the Smithsonian has a history of doing that. And when you find out, it's a lot of his allegations, and it's hard to prove because it's been obfuscated, but the anecdotal cases of finding, inexplicably large humanoid bones and then, calling what you think is the proper authorities in the Smithsonian, and then these things allegedly get dumped in the rivers or, what have you, that it's another one of those instances where the anecdotal evidence piles up to the point where you have to start asking some questions. Why is this the case? Turns out it's actually not that uncommon if you look at these stories for people to find these bones.
Where was that kid at? His name is Daniel Barnett. Where was he at?
I'm pretty sure it was in Somerset. I interviewed him last week, so I should remember that. But I think.
But I mean, where was he at with like the interdimensional aspect of Bigfoot?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, in his work, so I asked him that question, like what he thinks Bigfoot are, and he's from the angle that they're flesh and blood.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in his documentary that he's got coming out in September, he did go to Seattle, I believe, or the West Coast, somewhere on the West Coast, and had an experience that he can't talk about yet. Because, you know, with this stuff, with documentaries and stuff like that, they don't let you always talk about it until it comes out, which is annoying. But I was like, oh man, you got to tell me. But he was like, I can't talk about it. But he had an experience there, which is going to be in the documentary, that in his mind confirmed that these are flesh and blood. So I don't know what that was, but I believe they could be flesh and blood, but they could just be a science or something to them that we just don't understand. Something that they're able to do that we can't. I don't know what it is.
Well, that's a hot spot, right? He's going to Seattle, like the West Coast of America. The Northwest is I guess it would probably be the hottest spot in the country for Bigfoot sightings is going to be the Northwest, and I don't think that he's wrong at all in the idea that they're physical. They seem very physical. I mean, all I have to go by is testimony from individuals who have had encounters. And overwhelmingly, when they're throwing rocks, right? They're striking the sides of your house and things like that. Like they seem to be pretty mischievous, actually, which is interesting. You hear that a lot. It's like if you hear one story about a Bigfoot knocking things against the side of a barn or tossing rocks out of a tree line where he's out of view, but you know he's there. You hear that once and you go, that sounds strange and unlikely. But that is an overwhelmingly common theme in these testimonies, that they're hiding out of sight. They seem to be trailing you in one way or another. They'll follow you out of the forest, and they will do things like that. They'll knock, they'll throw rocks. I don't know what the hell that is, but that to me screams like, yeah, this is a physical entity. I don't think that those things contradict one another. The idea that this thing could be traversing through some sort of a dimensional gateway, a portal or something like that, and that it is also physical. I don't think that those things cancel each other out. What I would wonder is if he's still open to any of those ideas of interdimensional travel or something like that. Like a lot of these things, for example, happen in national parks. And in national parks, there's this overwhelming, I mean, you look at the missing 411 cases with David Paulides, and it almost seems like, and this is something, once again, to kind of give Tony his flowers, is something that I've watched him develop on his show, where there seems to be like, I don't know, maybe there are trees that act as portals. There might even be rock formations that act as portals in these national forests, and people seemingly go missing in them, in the forest that is, and then they will reappear on the other side of a terrain, like a mountainous range, and oftentimes this is like a child, has no business being able to traverse that sort of a thing, and when they're found, they don't look at all like they've been on a harrowing journey over a mountainscape as a toddler. So even the people who go missing, there seems to be such a strange event surrounding what they went through that people start to then speculate as to whether or not, I don't know, maybe you slipped into something and you traversed a great distance without actually having to physically do it. So especially when it comes to the national parks thing and the missing 411 cases, that to me really lends itself to being able to say, okay, let's explore this interdimensional aspect. Let's explore this portal aspect, because otherwise we're at a loss of explanations in regards to how these things are taking place, because physically they don't seem possible.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, you get like veteran outdoorsmen that have, been out all their lives hunting. They know the forest better than anyone, and they will just go missing without a trace. And then how can you explain that? I'm sure that certain circumstances that can happen, but as you say, with the missing 411, there's loads of cases where that happens, and it's like, how, and how's there no evidence,
There's also a weird hitchhiker effect type of thing where even people who don't have experience, if they're out looking for it, they'll often say that they're visited by like UFOs, or they'll see orbs and things like that. So it's like those things that are connected in this way, it annoys me a little bit, but I understand that there has to be like a very scientific approach to what they're doing to reach the unbelievers, but I don't really care about the unbelievers at this point. Like, we've been through so much the last 4 years that if you're gonna like say like we need, we need to rely on the science at this point, I'm just like,
Nice.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll go explore those things, and you guys can catch up. But that hitchhiker effect is also important to talk about, Top, right? Because how many times have we heard stories where it's not even just orbs? It's like, and this will open the conversation to something much bigger. Dogman seemingly has followed me. We've heard story after story, whether it's the confessionals or the Bump podcast or, you name it. There's a bunch of really excellent shows out there in regards to paranormal testimony. And you hear stories about these things keeping pace with their car.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's like,
Yeah,
so
man.
if that doesn't scream physical, just to go back to that topic, these trees snapping, sometimes trees that are, I don't know how many inches in diameter around that a human being simply couldn't do it. It seems like something is hiding in the tree line and snapping these like healthy trees. That screams physical to me. So, well, let me ask you this, Tommy, where do you fall on all these things? Let's say in particular, the interdimensional aspect or the portal aspect.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think there's a strong case to suggest that that's what these creatures can do. They can come in and out of our reality. It seems, you get like top trackers that track these things for miles, and all of a sudden they're gone. There's no, how do you explain that, man? If this was a natural animal that could just, obviously these things are intelligent. They're obviously, if they're as intelligent as us or even more intelligent than us, then they could probably get away from us. I don't know, but it just seems, especially with the portal, I think there's a lot to it, man. I think there's a lot more going on. So
the other thing too, okay, so this is great because what you just brought up is how like sometimes trackers and for people that don't understand, the average person who lives in a city could never get a grip on how good these people actually are at, hunters and trackers at finding whatever it is that you can track an animal for a long distance just by following its trail. But then all of a sudden the trail goes cold. It just stops. Like they'll come to a point where it's like, I don't know, I guess this creature got airlifted out of here because it just stops, which is not typical of an animal. These things behave in a pretty predictable way, which enables, an entire hunting industry to be built around them, right? That's why you can go on tours reliably with a hunting guide, and he knows where the animals are going to pass through. He knows their habits. He knows their trails. He can bring you to a good spot. You're going to end up high likelihood you're going to end up being able to shoot something that day. But for whatever reason, if you track this thing, it just stops. And now that opens up another really weird thing. Top kind of touched on it a moment ago. You have a Bigfoot sighting. You have a Dogman sighting. You have a cryptid sighting. You might also have orbs. You might also have inexplicable lights in the sky. You might have UFOs around these things. That was a big turning point in the Bigfoot culture, is when they started to make that connection between Bigfoot and UFOs. That became very uncomfortable. Even this was years ago, and I was young, but even when I was younger, like I kind of wanted to scoff at that. It felt laugh. I don't know what it is. Like now where I'm sitting, I realize like, oh, there's some veracity to that. But when I was younger and the community first started to make that connection, I looked over, I kind of had a laugh, and then I paid it no mind.
It's wild because you'll hear someone talking about their Bigfoot experience, and they'll tell you the story, how they've seen this creature and stuff like that. And then sometimes they'll go back to their experience and say, and there was these lights as well. But I didn't want to say about that because that sounds crazy. You're like, okay, you just told me you saw a 10-foot tall ape man and the lights sound, but they do seem to be connected. Like in so many cases, they're connected. There seems to be a connection there. What it is, I don't know. But it's, as you say, there's something to it, man. I don't know what it is.
And if you want to add another layer of, go ahead, Top. Sorry.
I was gonna say, like, so naturally with the your explorations into, I guess Bigfoot would have been your jumping on point sort of to do this podcast, but that'll lead you to all these other cryptids. But before we go into other cryptids, I just wonder, like, where are you at on aliens, because that leads directly into aliens as well. And
actually, before Tommy even answers that, we are at the 32-minute mark.
Oh,
A
boy,
great
sorry,
question.
guys.
And now we're going to yank the content away from the people. If you want to know what Tommy's answer is in regards to the alien phenomenon, you're going to have to go to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad.
That's rough.
Where you
dude.
can
That's
continue.
rough
It
that
is
you did
rough.
that.
It is rough, but I want to do that. I want to stick them and I want to twist it. All right. That's what
I
want to do.
I can also tell you as well, just to give you something else. I've got a forest behind me, and it's called the Devil Dog Forest, and I can tell you some things that even I've experienced in that forest. So
The Devil Dog. Okay, all right. We're going to get into aliens.
Forest.
We're going to get into the Devil Dog Forest. If you want to continue this conversation, guys, you want to enjoy it, you want to have an ad-free viewing experience, you want to sound off in the chat, and you want to gain access to the episode before the general public does, you can do so over at patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad, and you can do it for free. So I don't even know what's holding you back. Disgusting. All right, guys. Otherwise, we're out of here. We'll see you later. Tommy, okay, man. The devil dog forest.
Yeah.
And that does not sound. In America, we have devil dogs. They're delicious. I don't think it's the same thing that you're talking about. So
This is more werewolf dog man when I say devil
Okay,
dog.
all right. So let's start with the aliens first. Let's. What do you think is going on when it comes to the alien phenomenon?
So I think there's a connection with all the paranormal, with cryptids, with UFOs, with aliens. I think they're all very similar. Yeah, when you hear someone that's experiencing a haunting in their house, it can be quite similar to abduction. People that experience abduction, you know, they're very similar. They come hand in hand. You know, they're pretty much sometimes the same thing, but people's perceptions of them are just different. And they
that poltergeist phenomenon, the overlap is huge.
Yes. And then you'll talk to someone that's experienced abduction, and that's very much like hauntings as well, you know. So they seem to be connected. I've actually seen UFOs myself.
Have you really? Tell
I've
us
seen
about
things
that.
in the sky. So my first sort of big, I would say, 'cause I'm always looking up. I love this stuff, so I'm always trying to see something. And I think if you're always looking up, you're going to see weird things that you can't understand.
Yep.
Sometimes it's Elon Musk is he's doing stuff up there, and that's what it is. But when I was 14 years old, so this is going back quite a few years, we was playing soccer in the street. Football, really, but we'll say soccer.
Thank you. I appreciate
And
that.
we're
dare
playing.
you.
I know. I'm sorry. We're playing soccer in the street. Just me, my brother, and a few other guys, and it's what we always used to do during the summer. And this one particular day, I remember it was a beautiful day. It was a clear sky, very hot day, and we're all just playing football. And one of us has stopped and gone, "Look, what is that in the sky?" Right? And we've all just stopped playing football. And this sounds wild, but this 100% happened. There was like this building-shaped object in the sky. It was way up there in the distance, but we could see it, and it looked like a building. It just looked like a floating building. And I know that sounds wild. And it was like, yeah. And it was
rectangular?
it was like, you know, the buildings that you get in Dubai that are like really futuristic and you know, weird shapes, and you know, it was like that, literally in the sky. That it was orange and silver, you know, they were the two main colors coming off this thing, and we were just looking at it like, what the heck is that, you know, what? And for about 5-10 minutes we're trying to work out what it was. Is it a balloon? Is it, you know? But it's huge and it's not moving, and this bugs me. But we just started playing soccer again, you know. We didn't even didn't. So obviously, whatever reason, we got bored of looking at this thing, which is crazy as well, I know. And then we just started playing soccer again. Didn't see it disappear, didn't see it fly off. Don't remember how that day really ended. So you could say missing time, but I don't think that was the case. But it really weird. I never really talked about it. Out of all the things that I've experienced, I never really talked about that experience. And when I started doing Let's Get Freaky podcast, I was like, okay, what have I experienced? Let's write all this down, and so I've got something to talk about at the start of the show. And that sort of wild experience never came to my mind. You know, for whatever reason, it was there, but it never came to my mind. And then I was talking to Paranormal Heart, Cat Ward, and I was on her podcast. It was the very first time I was on a show. And we were just talking about UFOs, and this memory just came back to me, and I was like, wow, have I never talked about this? You know, like, this happened. And I told her what happened. She was like, wow. And I was like, wow, how did I not remember that for all this time? And then my brother rang me up like the next day, because he listened to it, and he was like, bro, what was it we saw that day? Because that was mad, and why have we never talked about it? I'm like, I know, I don't know, bro.
I'm sure you've.
But I'm
discovered,
glad you
Tommy,
remember.
That's like a common theme, right? Like people just for whatever reason they don't talk about it and they kind of forget about it.
Yeah, 100%. And I was so happy that my brother remembered it. So I wasn't like making this memory up, you know, because
Yes.
you start doubting yourself. You're like, that was so wild. And, you know, to anyone that's not experienced anything like that, I know you're going to be thinking, really? You know, that was probably a balloon, bro. You know?
Well,
But
so,
it wasn't, honestly.
I had a very similar experience. One time I was heading over to my buddy's house. He was several towns away, and myself, my girlfriend at the time, and my cousin were all driving. So my girlfriend is, you know, in the driver's seat, and very early on, even though this is like a 20-minute drive across several towns, I notice, along with my cousin, that there is something in the sky, and it's just a black stationary thing. It's very hard to tell what it is at the time, but as we get closer to the town that we're going to, we find that we're also getting closer to this object in the sky. Eventually, it comes into frame, and I am now leaned into the back seat, looking up into the sky from the car's rear window. And as I'm looking into the sky, it looks to me to be a cluster of almost like black balloons. I say balloons because the light was shining on them in such a way that it looked like the surface or you know the whatever the material they were made out of almost looked like rubber. It looked rubber and slick and black, and so you know you had a lot of shine from the sunlight. But as we got even closer, and this thing, by the way, has still not moved its location in the sky. It's in a fixed position, but it itself is moving. It's like undulating. There's like expanding and contracting and shifting, and to me it looked like a cluster of black balloons, but all the balloons were like a different shape, which obviously doesn't make any sense. Why would balloons be stationary? Who has a cluster of black balloons? Each one of them is a different shape, and that's only because, you know, there was no rhyme or reason. I couldn't see if they were spheres. I couldn't see if they were elongated. It was just constantly. And when we got to where we were going, this thing was on the same street above my buddy's house that we were going to. So when we got out of the car, my cousin and I were able to stand in the sidewalk and look up at this thing. And we noticed like some other people were also looking up, but it looked like, in hindsight, it looked like black goo. Yeah, there you go. Somebody in the chat said it, black goo again. It looked like black goo. And then it just like as if, I don't know if you've ever seen the film, The Forgotten. I forget who, Jodie Foster? I don't think it is Jodie Foster. Whoever it is, it's basically about abductions. And the closer this lady gets to figuring out what the hell's going on, why these people are going missing, the more these things start to interact with her. And eventually, it sucks like her boyfriend out of the house through the roof. It sucks the roof off the building, but the way that it sucks him into the sky is the same way that this thing just got sucked out. Like it was like it just either shot out into imperceivable space, like it got too far to see, or it was snatched out. And then that was it. And to your point, Tommy, wow, I literally went inside my buddy's house and then played video games.
Yeah.
Like it didn't even, we didn't even talk. We made it talk about it. Like, oh, what the hell was that? I don't know, dude. And then you just move on. Julian Moore. Thank you. Death Not Eggface says Julian Moore. Right. That was who it was. It's a great film, actually, The Forgotten. But yeah, so it just goes to show you, like, you can have the strangest thing happen. And I've been subjected to a lot of strange things. I know you're saying that you live in front of what is it? Dog Man's Forest. The Devil's Dog Forest. You have these experiences. There's simply no place to go because you can't wrap it up and understand it. And that lack of closure makes it so that your only other option is just to sort of walk away from it. And then you do that for like the remainder of your life until it comes up on an unhinged podcast. Yeah,
that's why I started Let's Get Freaky. It's like therapy for me, really. You know, I can sort of sit there and hear people's experiences, and it sort of validates what you've experienced as well, you know? So I had this other wild, I'd say UFO experience as well. This was when I was 25, and I was living in Brentwood, Essex in the UK, obviously, and we was in a block of flats, 4 stories high, and we were on the 4th floor.
Okay.
And it was, again, this was another beautiful summer's day, middle of the day, really nice day. And me and my mother-in-law both saw this. So I was so happy that she was there as well, and we saw this together. But we were sort of looking out into, like, we had like a little forested area opposite the flats. And literally out of the forest came these 3 objects. And they weren't very big. They were quite small, but they were like the size of a basketball. But there was 3 of them. And we could see it very clearly. Like, they came out and they were like constantly changing shape. So they were like, they seemed to be connected because they were like sort of floating around each other, but they weren't actually touching. And they were constantly changing shape. And they were like this silvery, metallic sort of, you know when the Terminator's melting in the Terminator?
Like
it
Mercury.
looked like that's how it looked. Like that's literally how the texture looked. And we could see this, and we're both looking like, what the hell are they balloons? Again, we're like, are they balloons? And they were literally constantly moving, constantly changing. But they were like sort of keeping the same distance from each other without actually touching. And they were just spinning around and around and around, moving up very slowly to the sky. Now we're looking and we're trying to work out, and it really bugs me because I had an iPhone at this point, so I could have pulled it out and started recording, but I didn't even think of doing that at the time. And we're watching, and they're going up and up and up, and then all of a sudden you just saw flash, flash, flash. These things just shut off. Now the whole experience was wild, but I guess if we didn't see that, you could have gone, okay, that could have been some sort of balloon. You know, it wasn't a balloon, but it could have been. It was moving in one direction. It was going up to the sky. Could have been something like that. But the way they shot off sort of confirmed that wasn't anything that we knew.
Right, that wasn't a cluster of balloons that you pick up from the supermarket. Yeah,
no,
that
wasn't
different.
tin foil that was just sort of looking perfect at the time, made it look like a UFO. This was something very strange. And we both, at the family parties now, whenever we're at family parties, me and my mother-in-law, we sit there and we talk about this because I love it, and she's quite into it as well. And you see the other family members looking over like, yeah, really?
You guys both lost your minds
Are
together.
you sure?
Nice?
Was you drinking that day? Like,
Yep.
no, we saw that, man, and it was pretty cool.
It's strange, right? Like I think I saw a UFO recently, and I had no inclination to pull my phone out.
Yeah.
What happened is I'm looking out over the trees in my house, and I'm looking up and I see this shiny thing, and it kind of like goes across, and I see it, and then it goes far away, like it shoots away in the distance, but super fast, way fast. Because I live on a road that they fly airplanes off of, so I see airplanes all the time. I'm like, this is not an airplane. So I looked at it, I was like, that's weird. Anyway, and then a couple minutes later, the same thing happened, like literally the same path. And this is like maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes later, same path. And I look at it again. I said, look at this. And then it flies off. And I was like, that's crazy. So I go, wow. Anyway, and then again, 4 times this happened. And not once did I think, let me pull my phone out.
Right. No, you don't.
Like, but it's also, what are the chances of this happening? It happened exactly the same way 4 straight times. And it was like this glittery thing in the sky. Now, if it moved across normally, but when it moved away from me is when I'm like, there's no way. Because I could see that it's going, what is this? It's north, south. Oh, sorry, south. No. It's going east at a speed that I can't comprehend because it's just gone. And 4 straight times. And not once did I even think about, even like, I didn't even touch my phone. I was just like looking at him like, this is incredible.
You don't, man. You're seeing something amazing, yeah. It's like when people say about like the Bigfoot videos, and I know there's a few sketchy ones out there that are not real. We know that, but then there are some out there that are pretty like, that. I know that we got the Patterson-Gimlin film, which in my opinion that's real because it's too like amazing, like the detail and stuff for the '60s for them to produce something like that. I don't think they would have been able to do it. But then there's a few other videos that are like questionable, but people are always like, yeah, but it's blurry, you know.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing a Bigfoot, right, and you have thought to get your phone out to take a video, you're gonna be shaking. You're gonna be all over the place. You're not gonna get that perfect shot, man. I wouldn't have thought, you know.
But even if so a lot of
even with like a professional camera, like I just got one yesterday. I don't know how to use this thing. Like, my quality should be like way better than it looks right now, but and this is a very good camera. So now you're talking about with your phone probably, and you're like, what is this thing? Most people have no clue about light exposure, things like this. It's like, what do you expect?
The theory around these things is evolving so much, right? And even when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. So when it comes to the Bigfoot thing and the blurry pictures, this idea that predators, right, like tigers and things like that, even gators can do this. If you're ever near a gator, it's actually kind of terrifying. It will emit this deep guttural growl that is almost akin to like infrasound. And in small prey animals, it can actually cause almost like a sense of paralysis because the fear is so intense. And that is certainly something that people have experienced when they have a run-in with a cryptid. There's this vibrational aspect. It causes you to shut down and to lock up, right? It's like fight, flight, or freeze. But this freeze aspect almost seems to be the result of either technology or a natural biological function. You would imagine that if a tiger can emit a low frequency growl that can paralyze its prey, and you could even feel it resonating through your body, that's something that is in excess of 8, 9, sometimes it's like 12 feet tall. And it's this massive creature that's able to snap healthy trees, or, send a limb flying through the air or what have you. Maybe then you're experiencing a much more intense version of that. But that's what I love about this field of study, is how much the information evolves over time.
It's not just that. Like, so we're also learning some new stuff. Well, this is old information, but the UFO that originally crashed in Roswell was taken down by like radar, some sort of sonar that was new for us.
Oh, it was a vacuum tube, something like that. I have it written down.
Yeah, it was like a vacuum tube radar that they were using, and they're like, "What's that?" And they pointed it at the UFO, and the UFO was like, "Bro," and just crashed. So they're emitting some sort of frequency at this high technology, and this thing doesn't. I mean, it's a loophole, I guess, in its construction, and it crashed. And then they went on a concerted effort to try to crash as many as they could, and I think that they were pretty successful in that. And then whatever was making these crafts probably adjusted. So when you think about that, and then you think about what's the correct way to put this? Like this sort of, I mean, there stories of Bigfoot doing this like weird telekinesis sort of thing, which I think would also be perceived in vibration. So if it is emitting this stuff, if it's aware of you, it can probably emit a vibration that'll jam your shit up. And whether it's done on purpose, I don't know. Maybe it's just a side effect of what it is.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and you hear a lot of people that see these creatures talk about like mind speak, like the telepathy that these things can communicate through your mind. They get like sentences, and which is similar to the abduction. When people get abducted and they get the mind speak, and these things can communicate telepathically. It seems to be like a similar. They're connected, in some way, maybe.
I wanted to say before too, that line of thought that I was going on with the infrasound, if you have like a vehicle that has a really substantial sound system in it, and you hit it with a lot of heavy bass. I was watching a video just like a couple of days ago of the car door, where it's thinner at the top, where like if you raise the window, it would meet the top of the door. That is actually because of the frames per second on the camera, it's vibrating, but the camera is only able to perceive it actually as like a wave. Like it looks like the car door, despite being made of sheet metal, is now turned into some other substance, where it's so if you're able to do that with bass to actually vibrate something, that it becomes distorted even to the human eye or a camera. If these things are emitting an infrasound and you're trying to photograph them, they would look incredibly blurry, right? Because it's the same concept as having your bass turned all the way up in a very loud sound system in the car. So I think that a lot of the theories surrounding this, and this is bringing us back to the UAP or the UFO conversation. There you go. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah.
And you'll see that, like I said,
that's
a whole car door.
That's vibrating as an E note, like a low E note. And then, obviously if you know the guitar, there's the B, and you can see that you can actually see the sine frequency of what it sounds like as it vibrates, and then it tapers off. But so to think that that's not happening on a different level when something that huge you're trying to record it or trying to interface with it is like kind of a bizarre to not
it's
consider.
It obfuscates your image. It also, so it makes you harder to perceive, like in the forest, right? It's actually a great, if you wanted to call this like if you believe in evolution and you think this is an evolutionary trait, it's a genius one, because it anything that you would bump into that's adversarial, I don't think anything is really going to be a predatory animal to a Bigfoot, But if it didn't want to, let's just say a Bigfoot doesn't necessarily want to tango with the bear that it came across. If it emits this thing, it's going to send that thing running. It's either going to be paralyzed with fear, or it might actually obfuscate the ability to see it, something like that. So it's actually a great trait. It's kind of cool in that way. But the same way that the Bigfoot narrative has developed over time is the same way that the UAP narrative has developed, because we used to look at these things as just nuts and bolts. But now the floodgates have been open into the way of like speculating if these things are organics, if they're plasma even, right? If there's some sort of like a pseudo physical light, where maybe something we haven't interacted with before, but it is a natural phenomenon. Because what Top's talking about, how this thing takes off in such a dramatic way, you can't even perceive how fast it's going, because it just, the scale of it is very confusing, but it shouldn't be moving that fast. Well, whatever is inside would get scrambled, right? Like the G forces would just turn it into putty. So maybe there's a different, if you go to, what's his name, the guy from S2, Bob Lazar, he's talking about an element that allows you to bend space-time around you, so you're actually not propelling forward like a combustion engine, but instead you're folding space-time around. Like, I even know what that means. I don't. But that kind of suggests that whoever's inside has their own gravitational base that they're operating from, so they're not feeling any of these G-forces, and they're not even feeling disoriented when they go upside down, because if you're inside the craft, upside down is still right side up to you. So maybe there's that, or maybe there is no pilot in some cases. Maybe this isn't a thing that can be piloted. Maybe this is some sort of sentient, intelligent matter that we just don't know. So it's like, dude, I kind of love that about it. It used to just be nuts and bolts, and now it's something different.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It blows my mind, man. That is for sure. Like, it could be some like artificial intelligence that obviously we can see where the world is going right now with AI. Like, it's definitely moving at a fast pace. Scary things are possibly very much around the corner when it comes to AI. Is this an advanced AI that we just don't understand yet, that maybe is already out there, that they don't tell us about, basically?
Well, here in America, not long ago, we had like this drone saga that was taking place, and Top and I were looking at it very closely. It was happening over the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, and that's where we're originally from. And just the conversation, I mean, that gets into a whole bag of worms, that topic, but the conversation alone surrounding drones is like, some of them, there was a lot of weird phenomenon happening where from the street level, it would look like a plane. But then you would notice that it's way too low to be a plane, because even though it looks like one, if a real plane was at that height, it would be massive and you would be able to hear it. But this thing is silent and the scale is all messed up. And in fact, it kind of looks weird. It doesn't look like it has any logos or symbols on it. And when you zoom in on it, for some reason, it turns into an orb. Or sometimes people, and this is New Jersey senators saying this, that he watched one turn into an orb, just flat out. Like, it was a thing that looked like a drone, and then over time, it just turned into an orb. And so now that whole concept of like, I don't know what's going on with that, that's been put to bed, but it's like that whole idea of an unmanned craft that seemingly can camouflage or shapeshift even. And there's a big movie called Nope. I think it was
yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
it was a good one. And I forget what the guy's name is. I typically don't like what he makes because it's always got some sort of like left-leaning political agenda attached to it. But this was fun enough. And what it opened the door for in regards to conversation was organics, right? Like these upper atmospheric jellyfish that, by the way, during the drone incursion in New Jersey, we were getting videos of what looked to be like these plasmic electric jellyfish just kind of floating along through the sky. And one of them in particular was seen over New York, and it was seen by multiple different angles. So we were able to watch like all these different videos of the same object. And then of course you even saw that same object just in entirely different geographical locations that, nowhere near New York. So there is, what are the guys' names? Cryptids of the Corn. I think his name is Justin. We had him on really early in the show's development, and he brought this idea to the table of upper atmospheric organic creatures, you know, that we would perceive potentially as UFOs, but might actually be more akin to like a jellyfish or some sort of oceanic creature.
But these are living organisms in the sky.
Yes, and it's like, dude, I mean, how advanced things have gotten from the, you know, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and then where we are now in 2025. It's almost like everything is possible.
100%.
And when I say everything, that's a range from like nuts and bolts, reverse engineered craft, and then all the way to I don't know, physical light that can manifest, shapeshift, and is intelligent. It's like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, man. In the early days of Let's Get Freak, I had this really cool dude on, Nick, and he created somehow. I don't know how. My mind is not scientific at all, but he created this camera that can look to the sky, and it basically films objects that you can't see with a human eye. And he was catching all these incredible, like jellyfish-like shaped objects, like living organisms. And it started for him, basically, it was like a Christmas Eve, I think it was, or Christmas Day. He was out walking the dog, and he saw like a UFO in the sky. And he said it blew his mind, and it opened him up to all this sort of stuff. And he started looking into it all, and this is how he went down that rabbit hole of creating his own camera and incredible stuff, man. And he's caught all these images of these different objects in the sky that look like, you know, they're living in the ocean, basically. You know, it looks that's how it looks, and you can't see it with a naked eye. And it just makes you think that there's a lot up there that we just can't, even the human eye just can't see it. You know.
Yeah, we recently spoke to Crow 777, or is it? Yeah, it's not 666, right? 777.
777.
And he's documented a second sun, and he has like, you know, a telescope with like photographic lens on it. But when it's tuned to a certain setting, you can see different things. And he also plays around with it. It's like it becomes weird, right? Because if you're creating your own camera and then pointing it at the sky, someone will accuse you of looking for something. But on the other hand, you know, guys they'll use a PCR test and dial it up and be like, this is COVID, you know? So it's like, I don't know if I guess the science is different, but this is what this guy is doing. And he showed us some photographic evidence where you can see a second body or a second entity behind the sun. And when the camera's like dialed to a certain setting, you can actually see these phenomenon. And he'll also get like pretty close up to the sun, but he's been photographing it for what, like a decade, more than that?
Something like that, yeah. I think he said since about 2015, maybe a little bit before that.
Yeah, so they're also speculating that there's an event that's going to be going down with this second sun, because it's like now I guess it's back in our alignment, in our solar system, if you believe in space or whatever you'd like to say about it. And it kind of lines up with everything else that's been going on, like, you know, Abramovic talking about 2025, Baba Vanga talking about 2025, looking
Alice
like
Bailey,
it looking like this is the end of days. We just had like this planetary alignment going on. There are craft in the sky. People are photographing organic, I guess, UAPs or whatever the hell in the sky. It feels like something is going on where we're being given the insight to look at this stuff in a different way. Man, I often think like, are we even we're being given the insight? Are we being pushed in that direction? Like this show, your show, our show popped up, I guess, a year ago, but like there have been a lot of people who are doing what we do and looking at it from this specific angle, and it shouldn't have been this way. Like I was doing something else with my life, and David was always kind of crazy, but I was focused elsewhere, and now so many people are tuned into this, like are directly looking at what is going on because it's significant.
100%, man. Once you go down the rabbit hole, there's no coming out, and that's the problem with this stuff. Like, and then you're stuck. I don't think you can get out of it, man. Once you meet people that just want to do their job, and I get that, you know, they just want to do their job, look after their family, and that is very important. I get that, and they don't want to deal with all this wild stuff that's thrown at us, and guys like us talk about. But once you go down the rabbit hole and you know that there's more going on, We don't quite know exactly what it is, but it's addictive, man. And we
Somebody's
need the
got a
answers.
much better idea than we do, though, because one of the things that conjoins this conversation between UAPs and orbs and Bigfoot and cryptids are the locations that these things are often seen at, and that location is often a military base, and that becomes very not confusing. To me, it's not confusing. I mean, maybe to other people it's confusing, but it seems like there is some aspect of our military industrial complex that is geared towards maybe more than understanding these things. And the reason that I say more than understanding is because oftentimes these bases are the location for cryptid sightings, dogman sightings. In fact, it's gotten so prolific that a theory has been birthed that maybe these things are, because it's like, where do they come from? Are they interdimensional? Are they biological, physical creatures that inhabit the planet and we just, they're awfully elusive and we don't see them that often? Are they being created somewhere in a chimeric lab setting that the military is conducting? And it's like, maybe all of those things. Why not all of those things? And so that theory that's kind of emerged out of that is that these things are being created on site or brought in on site potentially, right? Because you have these particle accelerators all over the world, and the big concern with them is whether or not they're opening portals, and there's a lot of lore to that as well. So maybe they're bringing them in, maybe they're creating them, but then they seem to be tasked with guarding the base, and that's something that you hear a lot. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Justin of Cryptids at the Corn, when he came on, he talked about seeing something on the base of a particle accelerator that he accidentally found himself on. I don't think he meant to be there. He was just exploring the woods, ended up having some strange encounter, and then ended up being descended upon by, I don't know if it's military personnel as much as it was official government personnel telling him he's got to get the hell off the property. And then lo and behold, he was on the site of a particle accelerator. So that combination there of like whatever the military is doing, the scientific community, the intelligence communities, the military intelligence communities, and then these sightings, right? Because we know like there's an aspect, and this goes into the same thing, right? When we talked about Dogman, it's like, what is it? Is it physical? Is it this? Is it that? Even the craft. Is it organic? Is it plasma? Is it reverse engineered craft that the military has gotten their hands on and then created their own thing? It's like, why not all of those things? I think what we're actually dealing with here is so multifaceted that somebody's got to be getting a kick out of watching the conspiracy community speculate and argue with one another about the nature of these things, when it's really like we're all kind of right.
Yeah, for sure. And all these answers could be right. Like all the arguments could be, as you said, could be right. There could be truth in all of these things, It might just, with the UFO phenomena, it might not be just one aspect, there could be alien beings coming from another planet, I don't know, or it could just be interdimensional. It could be all of them, and that might be why there is this confusion and the arguments, and I don't know. You go down one rabbit hole and there's another 10, as you guys know. And it's hard to sort of pinpoint what is really going on.
It becomes much more difficult, too, if you consider for a moment that any of the interactions people are having with cryptids or aliens or otherwise, these non-human entities, if there is communication, this whole entire thing becomes muddied if they have the ability to lie about their nature. Then the whole thing gets thrown out of whack. But and I guess that's just why we're left here to kind of writhe in confusion. But you mentioned living in front of this forest,
the
devil dog's forest, and delicious cream-filled pastry forest. And I'm curious, Tommy, what is it that you've had in regards to experiences?
I have to say, I'm the one who's named it the Devil Dog Forest. So I call it the Devil Dog Forest. It's a forest behind me, a huge heathland area. And so when I first moved to this area, so I'm originally from Essex, which is like right next to London. And like most people in 2020, my world changed and I was like, I need to go somewhere else. I need to get out to the country or to the beach. I'm close to the seaside now. So that's why I moved here. I wanted to get away. I love London, don't get me wrong, but I wanted to get out. I didn't want to be trapped there. If they're going to trap us again, I don't want to be there. I want to be somewhere.
One of the smart
I
ones.
want to be somewhere where there's forests and
A lot of
beaches.
people didn't make that decision. A lot of people
No,
are
I
still
know.
right in the place that they got locked down in.
Wild. They're waiting for it again. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's quite worrying. But for me, that was a big eye opener. I would have had a bit of a conspiracy mind, but for me, that was like, yep, this is real now. We got to go. So I really want to get to the US. That's my goal. So I've got to Dorset in the UK, and then the next hopefully will be the US. That's the goal. So I moved here so it was 3 years ago now, pretty much. Just about 3 years ago, and I didn't know anything about the area. We knew the area because we used to come on holiday here for like weekends and stuff. So we knew the area, but didn't know anyone. Didn't really know about the culture of the place or anything. Even though it's only 2 hours from where I'm from, it's very different to London. You know, people are very different. They talk different. It's like you're in another country, really, but it's weird. So I moved to this area. Didn't know anything about like the land. We only moved here because it's got a nice forest behind us, and as I say, we're near beaches and stuff. So weird things started happening when I first moved here, which I now put towards possibly being involved with the Devil Dog Forest. You know, I'm not saying 100%. So when I first moved, I've always been like someone who stays up late at night and watches TV or whatever late at night. I've always been a night owl. And when I first moved, I used to hear like a growling outside the window, like right outside my window. Now we live in a street where there's a lot of people, you know, people have got dogs, you know, we're not in the middle of nowhere. So it could have been a dog. You know, someone could have been letting their dog out at night and it's growling outside my window. Quite strange at 2-3 o'clock in the morning, but there we go. So I would hear not a good time. The witching hour. So I would hear growling and I would look out my window and I never saw a dog. And I'm like, okay, this is a bit weird, you know, but you know, it must be a dog because what else is it, you know? And then obviously, so we got the forest. So before I've got a puppy now, but well, he's 2 years old, but before I had the dog, we still went to the forest every day. I go to the forest every day now with the dog, but before I had the dog, I still used to like take the kids up to the forest. And we had this one strange night, me and my 2 daughters went to the forest and it was like getting dusk. It wasn't fully dark, but it was getting there. And we're walking to like quite a high area in the forest. And my eldest, Amy, just started freaking out. Like really started freaking out, very out of character. She's like, Dad, there's a Bigfoot over there. Like, and she's honestly, and I know that sounds crazy, like, but she's saying there's a Bigfoot. And I'm like, babe, calm down. You know, there's nothing there. I couldn't see anything. I'm like, there's nothing there. Calm down. I'm thinking in my mind now, she's watched too much Finding Bigfoot that I watch, and she's sort of imagining this or you know scaring herself. But she's like, no, I see it. It's really big. It looks like a Bigfoot with yellow eyes, and she's describing it to me. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get freaked out. You know, let's get home. Let's get home. So we've come back home. I've told the wife about it. I think she's watched one of my documentaries. You know, it's probably that's the case, which is you know wrong with me now when you consider what I talk about every day. You know.
Yeah.
But I that's what I put it down to. And then I was talking to someone where I started working. So I started working locally in a night job near where I live, and someone was telling me about the forest that we live in and the history of it, and that it's got a devil dog law. They call it the devil dog, and apparently it's in books and you know stuff like that. And she's telling me that people see like a dog man, how you would describe a dog man. You know, they see red eyes in the forest, and it's like a legend. But she's had experiences where she's seen stuff and she's like smelt weird stuff and had weird experiences in the Devil Dog Forest. So I'm like, okay, so that's weird. So I was having the growling. My daughter saw that weird thing in the forest. So I'm like, okay, maybe that's the Devil Dog. You know, I mean, I'm not saying it definitely is, but so that was quite strange. And then we got a puppy. So I've got a little Staffordshire Bull Terrier now. Lovely little dog. He's fearless. Like he's not scared of anyone or anything. You know, he's a cool little dog. And I take him to the forest every day. And on 2 occasions, one with me, one with my wife, on separate occasions, so the forest is quite big, so we're always doing different routes and stuff like that. And on this one occasion, me, the kids, and the wife were walking the dog through the forest. I'm at the front with Blue, my dog, and all of a sudden he stopped and just basically crapped himself. You know, there was something he was seeing in front of us, and he's like backing up. And in this forest, you know, we've got bulls. There's like wild bulls that walk around, and there's loads of stuff that you would think might scare him, but don't scare him. Like he'd run towards balls and stuff like that. He's crazy. But something scared him. Something's freaked him out. And I can't see anything, right? So there's nothing in front of me. There's nothing that should scare this dog. Okay, so I've had to literally pick him up, and he's trembling, and I'm walking through this area that he's getting scared all of a sudden. I'm looking around, you know, is there someone here? Is there some other dog or something that's freaking him out? Nothing. Can't see anything. Put him down. We've got through this little area. He's fine again. He's good to go. Nothing. What's going on? Like, let's go. Like, he's back to normal. But he really was really weird. Like, I've had him for 2 years now. I've only seen him do it once. The missus took him out a little while after that. Same sort of thing. He just freaked out at this certain area. It wasn't the same area. It was a different area in the forest. But same thing. Freaked out at nothing. Like, and I'm not saying that's the devil dog, but he saw something, man. And dogs see things. Dogs, like children, they see things that we don't see. He definitely freaked out at something. Something gave him a dog that is pretty fearless, I'll say. You know, he's not scared of any other dogs. You know, he can get quite aggressive to dogs, which I don't like. I'm trying to stop him doing that, but he can. And you know, but he's not scared of anything. And he was very scared at this moment, whatever it was, something he could sense or see. So I kind of put that in the devil dog bracket. Even though
how did you feel when that happened? Like,
I didn't get anything at that moment. Like, I was quite freaked out that he was freaked out, to be honest.
Right.
Because I was like, his dog doesn't get scared and there's nothing there. I can't see anything unless there's someone hiding in the bushes. But I couldn't see anyone or anything. So it was very strange.
That is strange.
And then there was another time. So I bought my 2 daughters new bikes, and we went for a bike ride through the forest. And there was this little area where the girls like to ride off. And it's not that long. It's like, I don't know, a quarter of a mile or whatever. It's only like a short little ride that they go off, and I can watch them go down this little route and they come back. So anyway, they've gone down this route and I'm watching them ride off. And all of a sudden at the end, this is seeing something, and I'm not 100% sure what it was, but there was like this, I thought it was a fox at first. I'm like, that's a fox. But it was grey, but it looked like the shape of a fox, and it was quite big. And I'm like, that's not a fox, that is a big dog. And I'm like, oh no, the kids are going right towards it. But anyway,
no.
my 2 daughters both saw this, spun round, you know, they were petrified, and started riding back to me. My little daughter, she fell over, and I'm like, go. So I'm just running towards her to pick her up. I've looked up, this thing's gone. Whatever this thing was, it's gone. No owner. Because I'm thinking, okay, it's a big dog. Maybe the owner's called it back or whatever. Maybe it was that. But I picked my little daughter up. I said, you all right, babe? You okay? You okay? She went, Dad, it was a wolf. And I was like, well, I don't think it was a wolf, darling, but, you know, and I'm thinking that did look quite weird. And I was freaked out at that point, at that moment. I was like, whoa, now that's pretty wild. Devil dog is going through my mind. And anyway, we've got home. And yeah, that's kind of the experiences that I've had there, man. So it's
Is that an area where you're going to get like a lot of wildlife that is in excess of the size of, like, you know, raccoons and such?
I mean, there shouldn't be wolves there, that's for sure.
Right,
right. There is big bulls, but I think they're put there by like local farmers and stuff, that they're owned, but they are like running free in that forest. There's horses there. There's deer, you know, snakes, badgers, foxes, but no wolves. There shouldn't be wolves. I mean, big cats possibly. People see big cats in the UK, and as I said, my mother-in-law saw one 20 years ago in the UK. So yeah, there could be stuff like that, but very strange, man. Very strange. And I don't like to say that I saw a dog man or a werewolf or whatever, but that is what happened, and that's why I call it the Devil Dog Forest.
It's funny because we, especially when it comes to kids, like, we will say that kids have a certain sensitivity. They can perceive these things better than adults can. But it's a two-edged sword, because you also have to sort of temper everything you say and be careful not to lead them in a direction where they're going to become, you know, prone to, I don't know, sensationalizing something, or, you know, because I think it is like, you know, my kid will do that with his friends. Like, I remember we used to live in an apartment, and he would play in the hallway with his friends, and all the kids would ever play is there was a stairwell, because we were on the third floor, and in the stairwell there was like a monster. That's what they would say. And who knows, maybe in hindsight they actually saw some crap. But they that's what the kids would do. They would all run to the stairwell, and then, you know, there's like 12 of them. And then next thing you know, they'd all come running away from the stairwell screaming that they all saw something, but they keep going back. And so, you know, like, kids are prone to doing that. And then it becomes very problematic when your kid can't sleep at night. For me, that's the whole main thing, is like, I just want to be able to sleep. I don't want you to have to crawl into my bed because, you know, you think you're seeing a greasy monster. So what a strange juxtaposition to be in, where it's like, yes, children can perceive these things. Also, when they do, lie to their face. Lie to their face so you'll never get another night of sleep again. You know what I mean? And so it's a hard wire to walk. I have had it with my son that...
You're protecting them, because if you're like... if you're telling them what they're seeing is real, which it might be, you're almost telling them to give it consent, right? And when you do that, that just invites more of it. That's the part that scares me, because I'm like, could they be making stuff up? Maybe. Depends on the age, depends on what they've been exposed to already, depends on your reaction to it. But certainly if it is happening to them and you kind of like feed into it, I don't really know the right answer. I don't know the right answer to...
So with my son, when he was maybe 3, and he hadn't been exposed to any of this sort of thing yet at all. Now I know he can hear like through the door when I'm doing my show and stuff like that. And he watches like so much of the stuff that they gear towards children is spooky. And I really don't like that, but he'll catch a glimpse of it, or his friends at school talk about it or whatever. We don't let him watch it at the house because I like to be able to sleep. I also don't want to be tormented by demons. But when he was like 3, he didn't tell me this till years later, actually. This is just something that happened when he was 3, and then he overheard a discussion about it, I think. Or no, he didn't even overhear a discussion. I remember how this went now. So years later, we didn't even live in the same house, and Netflix had a documentary on sleep paralysis, and the cover photo for that documentary was an image of the Hat Man. So I'm just skimming through, you know, Netflix's... Well, maybe it wasn't Netflix, maybe Hulu, it doesn't matter. And he saw that thumbnail. And he goes, I know who that guy is. And I about a brick, because I also know who that guy is. And anybody who's like, you know, paying attention to the paranormal space knows who the Hat Man is. And so, you know, you got to be really careful about how you answer it. And I just try to answer it in a way that I would if he said anything else, which is like, oh, yeah, okay, that's interesting. Very interesting. And he starts talking about it. He goes, yeah, when we lived in the old house... And I just know he was about 3 years old when we lived in that house. He goes, I would wake up and I would see him walking up and down the hallways. And other times he said he would see him, if he looked out the window, he would see him standing in the driveway underneath the floodlight that goes off when, like, you know, an animal comes by and the floodlight turns on. And he said, when I saw him, I couldn't get up because there was like belts all over my body. Tying me to the bed, which is like, you know, a child's way of describing sleep paralysis. Yeah. And I go, wow, check that out, man. That's
shut up, dude.
Shut the hell, dude. Let me tell you, there was another time too. And so when he said that, that's literally, I couldn't feed him anything. Eventually I did tell him, if you see that guy, call on Jesus Christ. That's what I told him. And I elaborated a little bit more. I said, like, he can't hurt you. But like, because it comes up in conversation as the years go on again and again, and eventually he gets more and more. And I basically tell him, like, lots of people see him, and we don't know exactly what he wants, but you're not alone. Like, a lot of people seen him. I seen him. You know, your grandparents have seen him. Yada yada. Call on Jesus Christ. It'll fix the belts. You'll be able to move again, and he'll go away. And so, you know,
it'll fix the belts.
It'll fix the belts. Yeah. But one time in that house, dude. So it's a 2-story house with a finished basement. But when you walk in the front door, you're not on the bottom floor or on the top floor. You're on a landing. And then there's a staircase to go down, or there's a staircase to go up. So one day he walks down the staircase. We're all upstairs. And he goes down to that landing and he looks into the basement and he just starts screaming. No words, no nothing. In fact, he was so little, because in that house, you know, we left by the time he was 3, so this could have been 2 years old or something. He never vocalized what it is he saw, but I know that he was frozen and he was screaming, and whatever it was had him so terrified that he was in terror, but he could not leave from what he was looking at. I had to rush down and scoop him up, look down there, there's nothing there, and then bring him back upstairs and like console him. So it's just another one of those things, right, where it's like kids can perceive for whatever reason. They're like closer to the veil, but then it's like what your job is damage control, right? So you're just trying to help them rationalize this. I don't want to dismiss it. I certainly don't want to tell them that the things aren't real, because I don't know if that's a good thing to do.
I don't do that. I don't say
I think they
real.
don't want you to. They want you to think they're not real. The longer that they can go without you identifying that this is an intruder, this is something external to yourself, this is something that needs to leave, and that you do in fact have the power to get them to leave. They don't want that at all, because that's where it ends. It ends with you figuring out that through the name of Jesus Christ, you can expel these things from your home. And, but without that, you can't do that. So they'd rather you think that they're not real at all.
100%, man. I had experiences when I was a kid as well, which is probably why I do this show, because I saw things as a kid that, for me, this is all real, from an early age. I've never doubted it. So I don't, when my kids see stuff, I don't say, you didn't see that. I'm like, okay, as you said, they can't hurt you, and Jesus' name is very powerful as well. And I tell you very recently. So I think having these conversations, you can invite these things in. Like 100%. Since I started doing Let's Get Freaky, I've always experienced paranormal stuff in my life, but since starting the show, I noticed an uptick of weirdness happening. Yeah. And I was like, I'm inviting this stuff in, man, and it gets scary, as you know. And something like quite recently happened in the house where it seemed to be, it wasn't just me experiencing stuff. The kids were experiencing a lot of stuff. The wife started experiencing a lot of stuff, and it got to a point when I was like, wow. And out loud, I said, in Jesus' name, whatever you are not welcome here. Leave. Yep. And it stopped. It, like, what was going on stopped. And so 100% that there is so much power there, man.
You know what it is? It's like these things, so if you've got an enemy that operates by night, they don't want that. As long as you don't know they're there, they have a constant advantage. So part of what they do is they don't want you to talk about it. They don't want you to know they're there. The other thing that they do is when you decide to talk about it, you effectively have stepped into the arena, and now it's time for them. I would say what they're doing is it's almost like a writhing, right? It's a last ditch effort. He's on to us, but if we can scare him enough, but that ends up blowing up in their face a lot of the time, because I think what a lot of people need is a real moment where they actually see these things. They actually have these experiences. If they're too subtle, you can brush it under the rug, which is what they want. But if it's big enough and you have to then tango with the fact that this thing doesn't fit into your worldview, but it has happened to you, then you have a couple of conclusions to draw, or you can ignore it and stay out of the arena. But I think as soon as you get in that arena in a big way. So yeah, to your point, Tommy, you said it started with when you started doing your show that this thing had an uptick, massive uptick in my life as soon as I started doing the show. In fact, the inception of the show, when Top and I had a phone conversation and said we should do this, that night I was in New Orleans on vacation at the time when he called me. And that night at the stroke of midnight, something banged on my third-story hotel room window, which didn't make sense because we didn't have a balcony, and we're on the third story, and it's a floor-to-ceiling panel. And so I wake up to the definitive sound. When you smack on a big glass panel, it resonates. It's like a bong, bong, bong. So that happens. My eyes pop open, and I'm so accustomed to this that I kind of go, well, I'm in New Orleans, and that checks out. And I realized my wife didn't hear it, so I go, is what it is. I've tangled with this before. I'm just going back to bed. And then as soon as I drift off, I hear it again, but this time it's on a different surface, much more like a door. And my wife pops up and she goes, "Did you hear that?" And I went, "Oh man." So I finally get up out of bed.
It's real.
I start walking towards the door to go investigate. I look at the oven, and the oven says 12 o'clock on the dot. On the dot, not 12:01, 12 o'clock even. And I look out the peephole to the front door, and it's got a good panoramic view, so you can see all the way down the hallway in each direction. Not a soul is in that hallway. I didn't open. right? Because you never know if somebody could be crouching there. But that's not why I didn't open. I just don't think it's a good idea when something knocks. You shouldn't open the door. You really shouldn't open the door. And I mean that in a very literal sense. There's a figurative and a literal sense. All of these things operate on consent. When is knocking everywhere, and I've had the knocking before when I started my old show, The Ravens Watch, which was very much the same thing, right? It's like, biblical worldview, exploring the paranormal. These things were knocking on all my windows and all my doors all around my house. There was silhouettes of men standing in the window of my niece's bedroom. We watched black mist scurry across my front lawn and like so much insane. And I would say it's all because I stepped into the arena.
Yeah.
And that's
what
they
put you off.
They don't want that. They want you neutral or in the they don't want you aware at all that you're engaged in warfare.
100%, man. I had it literally a few weeks ago in this room. So I normally work early hours of the morning. So it's about the witching hour, like 3 o'clock in the morning again. And I just heard, I don't know if you can hear it through this, but just like that loud and just constant. Like it wasn't stopping. And I'm like, what the? Oh, my dog started barking. Sorry. But I literally, I'm like looking around and it's just going off. Tap, 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 tap. And I'm looking around and I'm like, this is wild. Like in my mind, I'm like, something must have fallen and it's bouncing. That's the only thing it could be, but there's nothing fallen, nothing's bouncing. And I just started like laughing to myself. So like, this is crazy, man. And then it stopped and I was like, what am I doing?
I think the knocking, so the knocking is something that a lot of people might be familiar with. There's something that they like, I don't know, colloquially, I'm going to make up a word there. I'm not going to do that. There's something that they call,
go ahead, try
colloquially.
I know that word.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying, dude. They call it's a phenomenon that, sometimes the scientific community or the medical industry will give something a name, and that creates like this air of, I don't know, like we understand it, but we definitely don't understand it. They call it exploding head syndrome. You could look it up. And it's this idea that like people are woken up out of sleep by like somebody shouting their name or somebody banging on something.
I've had that. Yeah.
Yeah. The banging is a really common one. I've had that experience myself. And it's like a knocking. And I think, it's like that vampire rule. There was a movie called Let the Right One In, I think, came out like a decade ago. And they really got into that. Like you have to, so there's a girl that plays a vampire. I think she loves like a boy but they go through this thing where she has to be invited in. So I think that knocking is so much more significant than people might imagine. I don't think it's, what is a door? What is a window? These are portals, right? Literal, in the most literal sense, it's called a portal. It's the entry point from one place into another. And so the symbolism of knocking on a portal is I think it's a way of trying to gain access into you, because that's ultimately what they want, right? The portal that they really want to pass through is one that gives them access to this physical realm. But these things, they suck, and they pretty much can only experience the physical realm through you. They can inhabit you if you give them the consent. And so that consent comes in a lot of different forms, and the way they ask for it is this knocking, man. And I think that's even significant too. I mean, if you look at the whole Bigfoot phenomenon, just to kind of bring it back full circle, one of the things that he's super known for is just knocking against trees, knocking.
Yeah, man,
and
knocks. Yeah,
that could be an intimidation tactic. It doesn't have to be like a spiritual principle at all. But I'm just saying, like that concept of like knocking to gain entry, to ask for permission, it permeates all of this like spiritual cryptid crap. And just whatever the case is, I saw somebody, I think it might have been our homie Gray Pill. There he is. He says, if you hear a knock in your dreams, don't open the door. Just don't open the door, period. If you hear knocking and it's not like, I know in the Bible it talks about Jesus Christ stands at the door, and like the door is just over and over again. It's a theme. The portal is a theme. The knocking, the asking for entry is a theme. I think you do have to invite, because I think we're like there's a void within us, and it can be filled with an external spiritual aspect, and the one you want to fill it with is the Holy Spirit. But I don't think you get to go around like an empty vessel. I think you have to at some point concede and ask something to, enter you. And, if you're smart, it's the Holy Spirit. If you're kind of dicking around, maybe screwing with the Ouija board, even the interaction in just a conversational based platform is some form of consent, and you're now filling that void that we all seem to have with a different spirit, and that's what they want. So I think all that knocking is like, it's something so simple, but I think it goes over all our heads.
Yeah. Well, you think of all the paranormal shows. What is the main here communication? Knocking.
Yeah.
Knock once if you're
yes.
here. Knock twice if you're a man. And that is the form of communication. That is the main way that happens.
Yeah,
So,
Arcane Arsenals
man.
here says, knock on wood to call on the spirits. This knocking is, we have become very comfortable here on Nephilim Death Squad with the idea that the spiritual realm is incredibly legalistic, and it is all based on consent and permission. And if you look at the way that even Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit is described in the Bible, you have to ask. Right? You have to ask the Holy Spirit to enter you. You have to ask God. You have to ask Jesus Christ for forgiveness. All of this is like, we have a lot more free will in this realm. We can make a lot of decisions. But it's like, it's almost as simple as like, yeah, you got to ask. You have to ask. And
intention.
Yes, it's intention. Yeah, correct.
Yeah,
correct.
man.
Well,
Interesting, man.
Tommy, we are now at the 1.5 hour mark. I think it's a good place to land the episode. It's a great conversation, and I want to thank you for your time and for kicking it with us in the audience. But speaking of audience, for those who might not remember where to find you and your work, where should they go?
Oh, firstly, thank you so much. It's been an honor being on with you guys. Thank you so much. We are wherever you find podcasts: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Tommy Cullum's Let's Get Freaky. We're also now on YouTube as well, so you can subscribe on YouTube, and I put the episodes out in full on YouTube as well. So yeah, come say hi, man. And if you have any paranormal experiences to share, we'd love to hear them. So come over. Thank you very much, guys.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man, guys. Tommy's links are going to be in the description of this video when it's released. But until then, man, don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. We'll see you guys later. Peace out.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real. If you can persuade people that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see, you got them. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that portrays the bigger picture of what's happening.